Are you a farmer, forest owner, or community gardener in Washington or Kent County, Rhode Island? Do you work with NRCS programs like EQIP, CSP, AMA, or other Farm Bill programs? We want to hear from you. Join us for the local working group meeting on February 22nd from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at Ludit Library, 274 Victory Highway, West Greenwich, Rhode Island. Your feedback helps shape conservation funding in our community. Register now and take the survey at tinyurl.com/SRICD input. We'll see you there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rona Mann, and you're with me on the aisle today. And today we are back at the Gamm, one of my absolute favorite theaters of all time. I love what they do because they don't shove certain things down your throat. If they have opinions, be they politically correct or otherwise, it just kind of happens. Their choice of shows is most of the time quite good, and they just have a good group of people. So here we go. It's between Riverside and Crazy. It's on right now. It will be on through March 9th. And I saw this a few days ago, and I always like to wait a few days. I wait for Ben to come in and
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. But I don't like to, I would not want to do it immediately. When I see a play or even a movie, I always think of when you're letting meat marinate overnight or for a couple of days. I like it to marinate in my brain. And usually I change opinions on things, or I get thinking a little deeper, or I go back and I read the articles that are in these playbills. And by the way, if you're not reading these when you go to the theater, you're missing a lot. There is an excellent one here between acting and directing, it's called, because the director of Between Riverside and Crazy is Jeff Church. It's his directing debut at the Gamm. You might know him if you've gone to the Gamm, if you've gone to Trinity or Burbage as an actor, and he's one hell of a good actor. I've seen him do so many different things, and all of them well. This is his directing debut. And he is, in this article, he's speaking with Tony Estrella from the Gamm, who does both. He is the artistic director at the Gamm. He is also one of the top actors. He directs, he does everything. And while I was marinating the last few days, what I was thinking about is when you hear talk ahead of time about a show, about a movie, in this case, this show won the Pulitzer Prize for Best Play in 2015, 10 years ago. So you're thinking as you go in, wow, I'm going to watch a Pulitzer Prize winning play. And then if for some reason you don't like it, how do you tell people that? Because everybody else always has the opinion, oh, won the Pulitzer Prize, must be great. Won the Oscar, must be great. He or she was as an actor in this, that, and the other thing, and won all these awards. That means it's great. So I kind of wrestled with that, and this is what I came up with. The truth. I don't like the play at all. That doesn't mean I didn't care for the performance. I didn't especially love it either, but there are many good performance values to it. As a play, I walked out of there scratching my head thinking, well, what else was nominated if this won Best Play? I just don't see it. I don't get it, maybe. Now, it is written by Stephen Adley Gurgis. I assume I am pronouncing his name correctly. Sounds very Hungarian to me. I know, having read a little bit about him, that this is not his first rodeo by any means, and that he does tend to write about the gritty parts of New York City, which this is. It is very gritty. and it is very New York, and that's fine. I'm not from the country. I'm not a farm girl. I was born and raised just over the Hudson River from the grittiness of New York. So I'm familiar with that, all of that. I just didn't care for the play. I went back, I did a little bit of reading, and I saw a comment from Jeff Church, the director, that I think is one of the best things I have ever read, ever heard from an actor director. He says, she said, looking at her page, I'm going to have to go back to my program because I know, here we go. He says, directors build the playground, actors go in and play in it. Now, Ben, you've acted before, and I read that. I said, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Directors build the program, actors go in and play in it.
I love it.
And he then goes on to say that first and foremost, he is an actor. It really is a great comment. It says a lot. It says a lot about any show, not just this. He also says a few paragraphs down in his interview, as a warning to those pearl clutchers who may have wandered in unknowingly, this ain't effing Neil Simon. And he's certainly right there as well. So the way I looked at it was he created this playground, but he had to get his actors to jump in. But the performance I saw, which was a press opening matinee, they weren't jumping in. They were jumping too fast, too loud, talking so fast at times that you didn't understand what they were saying, running amok, running too much. Maybe that's what he wanted. But I looked around, and of course, on a Sunday matinee, it's going to draw an older crowd. I was in that matinee. I'm not a spring chicken, but that's not why I was there for a matinee. I was there because I didn't want to drive back down here in ice and snow, and matinees are much safer for me. But I looked around and I saw a much older audience. So when I had heard it was billed in many ways as a comedy, they weren't laughing very much. Not in Act 1. Act 2 they were, but not so much in Act 1. And sadly, when intermission came and the lights went down, and you always get applause for that first act, it was very scant, the applause, very. Similarly, at the end of the play, and this is a pet peeve of mine in Rhode Island, we are just held to this. If I go to the theater, I have to give it a standing ovation. Doesn't matter if it's good, doesn't matter if it's bad. When it's over, I got to stand up. And every show I ever go to, everybody gives it a standing ovation. Well, if you do that for every show, how do you know what's good and what maybe isn't so good? But that didn't happen here. And I haven't seen that not happen in years in Rhode Island. There were 2 or 3 people that jumped right up because they were probably programmed to it, or they wanted to get out, or their son, daughter-in-law, somebody was in the cast. But I almost think it was because they were programmed. And I waited and I looked all around, and very slowly people started to get up. So I'm saying to myself, well, it's not me. Not that it would bother me if it were me, because I never try to be like every other reviewer, but I don't go out of my way to not be either. I absolutely never read or listen to another review until after I have filed mine. I have not read a one. And I'm sure there have been a few of them out. Usually East Greenwich is out, and Warwick and Boston, and I don't know what else, but it'll be interesting to read theirs. All right, as far as the performance goes, um, it did change in the second act. The script seemed to move more. I think the first act was just too long. This is almost one of those shows you could do in 90 minutes and not have an intermission. I'm not sure an intermission was necessary at all. Um, it is a small cast. I believe there are 7 in the cast. Most of them have a good amount of experience. A couple of them, it was their debut at the Gamm, but they have certainly worked in other theaters. The character that bothered me a great deal was Luz Lopez. She played the ditzy girlfriend of the main character's son, but she talked so fast, so staccato-like, and in this very high register, screaming and running around the stage, that we lost a lot of it. I think she probably had a much funnier part and performance and needed to be brought down a little bit. There are females that do that. I see that with female sportscasters on television. They're in a very high register, and I keep thinking, you're going to lose us. It's too shrieky. And that's what I was thinking here. And the other surprise, because I know she's been around a long time, Rachel DeLude played a police detective who at one time was the partner of the main character that they call Pops. And we'll talk about him in a moment. And I thought her performance was one-dimensional. It was one-dimensional, loud, strident. She was there to ask him, Pops, to take her down the aisle. She was marrying the lieutenant, another detective. And I never got the feeling that she really loved him. The same thing with his son, who a couple of times said, I love you, Pops. They called him Dad or Pops throughout. The sincerity just wasn't there. It was, let me get the lines out. Let me get the lines out. Pops, the lead character, boy, if you blow this, you wouldn't be much of an actor, and he didn't blow this. He's a fine, fine actor. He has had a lot of experience. His name is Cliff. It's either pronounced Odle or Odle, O-D-L-E, and forgive me if I'm not saying it properly. He is an actor. He's a director. He also teaches acting. He is the centerpiece of the show, and all these crazy people work around him. He's the one who is between Riverside and crazy. And for those of you who aren't that familiar with New York City, Riverside Drive, very Tony, fancy, Upper West Side, always was. And this guy had lived rent controlled on Riverside Drive, and now he's being evicted. He's had a lot of bad things happen to him. 8 years ago, he was shot. It killed his career. It killed his marriage. He was shot by a white officer who never really was convicted for it. It was like every bad thing had happened to him, and he should be so down and so angry. And yet he's the one that's got a lot of the humor. He's also down. He also has some of the quote unquote filthiest language, grittiest, but he has reason for all of this. Why he has all these crazy people around him is mostly his fault. His son's just come out of prison, and he's letting him live there. The crazy ditzy girlfriend is living with the son and says she's pregnant. There are all these people that aren't quite right. And then the church lady comes. And I can't tell you anything about the church lady. She is what made Act Two worth watching. And the people who left with their coats, probably, if they heard about it, should have stayed, because what a terrific actress Maria Albertina is. First time with the Gamm, I believe, and absolutely great. She was the only one that, even though, I mean, these people are all charlatans, they're playing all charlatans. At the end of it, the music that comes up at the very end as they're going towards the curtain call is games that people play. And it fits perfectly because that's what this is about. But she somehow was more than a one-dimensional character. The rest of them all seemed to me like they were run over by a truck and somebody stood them up, and they were just one-dimensional things, yelling, swearing, shrieking, and running around. So, all in all, Between Riverside and Crazy is a perfect stage for Jeff Church's comment about the playground. He did build one, but at times the swings swung too high and out of control. The slide was too fast and too slippery. And the sandbox, which is where Cliff Otto sat in the center, holding court, was the only place where I felt anything interesting was really happening. Riverside and Crazy runs through March 9th. It's then going to be followed by a show you may or may not have heard of, Hamlet. And I have a feeling, I know Jeff Church is in it. There was a reference made in the program. They didn't say what part he's playing. I'm kind of wondering if Tony Estrella will be Hamlet. I believe he was about 14 years ago when they did it. But if you come see Hamlet, it's not effing Neil Simon. And if you are a pearl clutcher, you're going to be able to loosen your grasp. So you make the decision. Here it is, between Riverside and Crazy. You might want to see if I'm the crazy one and you just love it. If not, stay tuned. They're going to do Hamlet in April.
I love it.
And for On the Aisle, this is Rona Mann, having just been at the Gamm.
Wood River Health is my home for health.
Wood River Health is a one-stop shop for primary medical care, dental care, behavioral health, and social services. We care for the members of our community because they are our community. I'm Allison Crow, President and CEO of Wood River Health. Since 1976, our health center has provided high-quality, affordable health care to residents of Rhode Island and southeastern Connecticut. We are your neighborhood health center. Let us be your home for health.